Warning, this topic is not for the faint of heart.
Among the rain and lights I saw the figure 5 in gold on a red fire truck.
Is it human nature to want what we can't have? In 1827, the 23-year-old Hector Berlioz attended a performance of Shakespeare's Hamlet at the Odeon Theatre in Paris. Harriet Smithson, a charismatic Irish actress, was playing Ophelia at the time. Berlioz became smitten and wrote her an impassioned letter. But Smithson did not reply. Undeterred, he continued to bombard her with messages, but she left Paris without making contact. Eventually, his obsession and infatuation would lead to the inspiration for Berlioz to compose his great Symphonie Fantastique. Then there was Robert Schumann, who was infatuated with Clara Wieck. And in 1840, anticipating marriage with Clara, he was impassioned and excited at that. He composed almost 240 songs in 1840. As a male composer, I can't speak for the perspective and experience of other genders. But it is my experience that psychologically men and women have more in common than we have not in common. So invariably in this discussion there will be many things I say from my point of view and experience that are universal and apply to artists of all walks of life. This is a very personal topic for me, and it is a very misunderstood topic, partly in due because there has been a great amount of romanticization of the tortured, alone, loveless composer or artist. Many myths and many misconceptions. Art and music is created under three circumstances: in the longing for, in the pursuit of love; secondly, in the presence of love; and thirdly, in the absence of love and in loneliness. Personally, I have created art in all three circumstances, and it is perhaps a sad truth that my finest works have been created under the third and continue to be created under the third circumstance. In history, the longing for love and the pursuit of it has certainly been a motivating factor for composers and artists to create art as a response to, and in that yearning and longing, it fuels the passion to create art. And maybe at some level many artists choose or are desiring to impress the object of their desire by creating these fine works. Look what I have created in inspiration because of my desire for this romantic person or longing. But that is often short-lived, and perhaps that is the nature of romantic love, that chemical euphoria that the brain gives off. But is it enduring? Is it practical? Is it just a distraction from truly focusing on developing one's craft and expressing and connecting with one's emotions authentically and deeply? Do we even need love? Or is love just simply a chemical illusion? In the absence of love, and there have been many composers, like Brahms is an example, although he had his periods of longing too, the absence of love and loneliness does create focus. In many ways, an artist's lifestyle is very incompatible with traditional romantic relationships. What I mean by that is it is natural in a relationship or marriage for the man to work, make money, to focus on the family, on her, and provide, have that house, have that car. But an artist's life revolves sacrifice. It involves living with less. It involves a reprioritization. It involves giving up the desire for material things. It is the pursuit of artistic and spiritual things that takes precedence and priority. For many spouses and husbands, that is unacceptable and difficult to accept. Not always, but as a general rule. And also, is it possible to have two mistresses? Music, in many ways, is a very, very all-consuming mistress. And that leaves perhaps little left for the other. Is it a good thing to have one spouse resentful of the art and the time spent doing art, and then the recuperation time after creating the art that is necessary? The hours spent in contemplation and introspection, in search for inspiration, lack of focus and attention on them, that they do deserve. Is not the artist best alone? Does an artist even deserve love because of their selfishness, spending all their time creating decadent art? These are difficult questions. I've heard many times that an artist shouldn't have to be alone. It shouldn't have to sacrifice their own happiness for their art. In principle, that is true. But in practice, I think it is quite different. Hours and hours and hours spent composing, writing. Is there room for more? Maybe not. And the other thing, too, is the aloneness when there is no romantic love for the artist. The pain of aloneness and loneliness is a great catalyst and driver to create. It is said that the most creative people are those who have suffered trauma, those who have had pain. There is no art created by committee. It is simply one artist wrestling with his or her demons, coming together to build this tapestry, which is a mix of their experience, their training, and their own psychology. The artistic object is a manifestation in many ways of the psychology of the artist. And while we want to understand a piece of music by separating them from the creator of that piece of music, they are connected. It is also an interesting phenomenon that when there is an artist who is in a romantic relationship, very much the artistic objects created by the artist in that relationship will manifest pieces of their partner. This is the reality, because there is a certain amount of union between two individuals in a romantic relationship. And on to that romanticization of the tortured, lonely artist. Brahms felt that he simply could not divide his attention between two things. But he also had very misogynistic points of view towards women, which came from a very, very traumatic childhood, raised on the docks and brothels. But to romanticize the suffering of the artist as we do, I think, is dehumanizing. It may be a necessary condition for many. I like to think that it isn't a universal, that there are artists who can have fulfilling romantic relationships and create beautiful art at the same time. In fact, there are many. But we need to have compassion and sympathy for those tortured artists who create magnificent, beautiful works, but do so at a cost to themselves their own happiness and psychology. Although it isn't quite simple as that, because there's happiness and euphoria in creating art. But its source, the underlying aloneness, being misunderstood, having a romantic partner who understands why the need to create is such an overriding purpose, who appreciates that it could be a wonderful thing. But in reality, the reality and what is theoretically desirable are two different things. So when you have encounter that grumpy, lonely artist whose only real kind of purpose is creating that art, and their ego becomes their defense for their loneliness and their lack of being understood by both a romantic partner and the broader society, understand that beneath that huge ego and that disagreeable personality is actually someone very lonely, insecure, and maybe in pain. And isn't that, in some level, a beautiful thing? That it is not perfect human beings that create most magnificent art, but is flawed, broken, struggling people who are just as human as anybody else, as all of us who create those things. Not some angels or, human manifestations of God. Bach was no angel. He was a deeply flawed man and very disagreeable, yet he created magnificent music. Isn't that one of the most great wonders of our humanity and the human experience? That it is imperfection, flawed human beings that create our finest artistic and musical achievements. That means there's hope for all of us.